Welcome, Agile friends. My name is Richard Copeland, and I'm hosting this session with our amazing speaker, Tom Henricksen. In this session, we'll focus on the team health. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Richard. Great to be back on the Agile Online Summit. I've been away for a few years, but it looks like Vasco and friends have done a great job with it.
Well, it's fabulous to have you back, Tom. Really good. In this session, as Agile coaches, we'll learn some of the great questions to ask ourselves when evaluating our teams. There are also some other sessions on the Agile Online Summit 2024 that touch on this topic. Don't miss those. For example, Gil Barosa's live session on the 22nd of October, Deliver Better Results, Unlock the Power of Your Organization. Yeah, you want to catch that one. Check out the other sessions at agileonlinesummit.com. But now it's time to focus on our guest speaker and our topic for this session. So first of all, Tom, what is a good way to quickly assess a team's health?
That's a great question, Richard. And I actually had that question, and this is why I kind of did some work and background on this. Is really, I have had this question. So I have been a Scrum Master, but I've also been a developer more on teams. And that's kind of where I've been looking at it from various teams I've been on to think about how can we assess a team and kind of where they're at. And so that kind of got me to, start asking a lot of my Agile friends that I know, and I got a lot of good insight. So really to assess, something, I think it starts with a good thing is a checklist. So I'm a fan of books. I do a lot of reading, Richard. One of my favorite books, and this isn't somebody who's an Agilist. He's a surgeon, but his name is Atul Gawande, and he wrote the book Checklist Manifesto. And this is a great book. That it really helps, and he does it in a great fashion where he walks us through. Pilots is kind of where a lot of us think of a checklist from, because we hear that term a lot. But he walks us through the history of actually the pilot's checklist in the book. It's very interesting. But I know we're Agilists here. We want to think about Agile teams and assessing teams, but I think it helps to have a checklist. Now, some of you are probably familiar with a guy by the name of Henrik Nieberg. He has a checklist that he has on his website. We can put that in the show notes if we want, or share that with people later. But it's kind of old, but it's good. I think is a good kind of starting point. I think when I think of a checklist, I'm actually, like I mentioned, Richard, I've been a developer for many years, and I've looked at creating a developer checklist. And I think too, with when you're assessing team health, I think it's important to think about a checklist and what things you can put on there. And I think, to be honest, it helps if you can use like what Henrik has there as a starting point and start thinking about what depending on your role. If you're a Scrum Master, you might look at different things. If you're an Agile coach and you're working with lots of different teams and you want to assess health, but starting there with a checklist, I think is helpful to kind of look at it from the vantage point of the whole team. And then, like I said, maybe you're a Scrum Master, you might want to look at the team and the product owner, or if you're an Agile coach, you might want to assess, also Scrum Masters and what they're doing with the team to kind of see where they are and kind of, what's going on, the dynamics involved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the great thing about checklists is, if you don't have one, you're going to forget something.
Yes, whether you're traveling or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
Yes, my wife's a great fan of checklists, and she's got me into them as well. Dragged me kicking and screaming into that space.
Yes.
But now I wouldn't live without them. So fantastic, really good. Thank you. Yeah. So moving on from that, so how can we better understand the environment the team works in? Because they can be quite varied.
Yeah. There's a lot going on anytime, Richard, you're talking to a team or working with a team. So there's a lot to think about. Obviously, a lot of Agilists have heard of the Cynefin framework. That's a really helpful tool to use if you're a coach or a Scrum Master coming into a team, to kind of use that as a metric to kind of look at the different aspects where the team is. Another thing I think is important is to kind of call out or at least understand the assumptions of the team. I think that can be real helpful to understand, the different dynamics. Working with lots of different teams myself, and I'm sure you have as well, Richard. You start to see some things at first that you kind of scratch your head, and you're like, why does the team do this? Maybe there's a certain person that dominates the meetings. Maybe it's there's certain people that are always arguing about certain things. So I think it's important to kind of think about the assumptions and then to ask some questions. I think agile coaches and scrum masters can be really good at asking questions. And I think, but yeah, that's really helpful to kind of look at the assumptions and see where they are. But like I mentioned,